Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about my support for euthanasia and assisted suicide. However, what I am going to say today does not apply to people in prison. This is just my personal opinion, and I understand that religious people are not the only ones against euthanasia. I also know that not all believers are against it, but unfortunately they're not the majority. So as always, if I say something and the shoe doesn't fit, don't wear it. So let's begin. I am going to define the terms I'll be using. Active euthanasia is when a doctor or someone else deliberately causes the death of a person with their consent. For example, the doctor is the one who directly gives them the lethal injection. Passive euthanasia is when the patient chooses not to receive a treatment or to discontinue it, or chooses to not be connected to machines or to be disconnected, etc. This way the person is not deliberately killed, but allowed to die naturally. Assisted suicide is when the doctor or someone else puts the lethal dose in front of you and you voluntarily take it, or when the doctor gives you a prescription and you buy the medication and you take it on your own. I am 100% in favor of all three of them because this way each person has the option and the freedom to choose what is best for them. Whether it's passive or active euthanasia or assisted suicide, any one of these three are done with the direct and conscious consent of the patient. However, later on I will talk about two exceptions to this rule. But if anyone causes your death without your consent or that of your family, then that's not euthanasia or assisted suicide. That's homicide, which is not what I am supporting here. In order to simplify, when I use the word euthanasia, I'm referring to both active euthanasia and assisted suicide, since passive euthanasia is already permitted, so I'm not going to be talking about that. Okay, for me, euthanasia is an inalienable and irrefutable right. This is not up for debate. The only ones who are confused about this matter are the ones who still think that freedom and autonomy over our own life is a sin, a crime, or an evil that must be banished or prohibited. Perhaps there are some exceptions or cases that are not black and white, but in general, I believe that each person is free to choose if they want to continue living until their natural death, or if they want to put an end to it sooner. Both options are equally respectable and valid because each born person has the right to live and to die with dignity. I believe that anyone who is of sound mind that has an illness, disability, disorder, etc. must have the option to end their life with minimum restrictions. For example, they can talk to a doctor, a psychologist, or a counselor and see if there's nothing else they can do for him in order to better his situation. But if after that a person does not want to continue living, then he can have access to this service when he chooses to do so. The people who are considered healthy must also have this option. They can be given a few months to think about it, they can have access to financial or psychological assistance, etc. And afterwards, if the person wishes to end their life, they can do so as well. In the cases of children with terminal or extremely painful illnesses, the parents or tutors can make that choice for them if the child is too young to give authorization himself. But if a child is healthy and wishes to be euthanized, in this case it would take a longer period of time to give the permission. He would be taken to therapy, counseling, or anything that is necessary so that the child would not make a hasty decision. But if he still doesn't want to continue living, then he has a right to leave legally and in peace. If the person is in a coma or has lost his mental faculties, then the family can decide for him. This is why it should be required for each person to express their wishes beforehand, and this way there is no confusion and you would avoid having to put the responsibility or blame on someone else. In the cases where the young child or the person cannot make that choice for themselves, then there's an exception made, and the parents, tutors, or family members are the ones who make the choice to euthanize. But the requirements to give this permission would be very strict in order to avoid abuse of power. It seems like this topic is pretty much divided in three groups. The ones who are completely opposed to legally giving each person the autonomy to terminate their own life. Then we have the ones who are okay with this practice, but with maximum restrictions and only to be allowed on those who have a terminal or very painful illness. And finally, there might be those like me who support suicide with minimum requirements because we understand that each person has control over their life and therefore over their death. And we know that neither the circumstances, our level of health, or other people's beliefs or opinions have the power to determine or nullify this right. Having said this, even though each born person at any point of his existence has a right to decide whether he wants to continue living or not, I also understand that each situation is different and must be approached in accordance to its level of complexity. This is why I support that in certain cases, the waiting time could be a bit longer, but what I don't support is that this right be denied to anyone. In our society, we have agreed that as a general rule, we assume that everyone wants to live, and therefore we give positive value to life and we respect it, with a few exceptions. But in this case, humans went to the extreme, to the point where they want to force people to continue living against their will, and to see it, and even to treat it as a crime if someone chooses to opt out. There's nothing more absurd than this. What I do with my own life can never be considered a crime because I'm not directly affecting or hurting anyone else. In this case, the only crime committed is against the person for not allowing him to exercise his right to die in a safe, legal, and peaceful manner. Euthanasia means good death. And for me, there's nothing more comforting than knowing that I can end my life whenever I consider it prudent or necessary, without having to spend months or years in courts paying lawyers an outrageous amount of money in order to ask for permission to end my own life, when it is absolutely unnecessary to do so. This is why I have thought about having a system in which whoever wants to commit suicide, he can do so freely, and if he wishes, he can donate his body to those who want to continue living. Basically, the person who wants to leave can make an appointment ahead of time. He can go to the hospital and they can have ready the people who need a heart, a lung, a kidney, etc. And when they're done removing all the parts of his body they can use, they can just give him a lethal injection and that's it. Instead of wasting so many vital organs of people who committed suicide because they are contaminated with chemicals or poisons, or because they threw themselves in the ocean or off a cliff and now there's no way to use any parts of their body that could have helped someone else. This way, those who want to continue living will have a greater chance or probability of doing so because they won't be waiting around months and months or even years for someone to donate body parts that they need. Many people die waiting, while millions of bodies are wasted, all because of ridiculous moralistic beliefs. The way that I'm suggesting, those who want to die will be able to do it safely and they will save many people who do want to live. How great is that? Okay, so what's the difference between a living being and a dead one? Basically that one is breathing and the other one is not. For me, breathing is just a biological process. It doesn't have an intrinsic value, but a subjective one. And I don't see why inhaling and exhaling ought to be obligatory for anyone. Nonetheless, there are people who seem to be obsessed with this, and they are vehemently opposed to allowing anyone to voluntarily stop breathing. I believe that most people are against euthanasia for religious reasons. They believe that their God gives life and that He's the only one who can take it away. But those people would first have to prove the existence of their God before they even attempt to deny or take away rights in His name. The question is, who owns your life? You or someone else? If you believe that your deity is the owner and that you are not authorized to decide over this, that's fine. You are free to believe whatever you want. But this doesn't mean that you have any rights over me. I think it's about time that you know your place and you stop acting as if you were the ruler of other people's lives. Each year, 20 million people attempt suicide, but only 1 million succeeds. This means that of the other 19 million, many end up with irreparable damages, in a coma, in a wheelchair, etc., which also affects their family members emotionally and or financially, because they now have to take care of someone who needs supervision, medical care, or that's in a psych ward, or that's in therapy or jail, since suicide is still stupidly considered a crime in many countries, causing more problems, tragedies, and pain than the person originally had. So who are some of the ones who oppose this right? The ones who put their religious beliefs above the well-being of others and think that what applies to them must mandatorily apply to everyone else? The ones who are afraid of progress or of the unknown? The ones who have given themselves imaginary rights over others? The ones who don't have the capacity, the will, the humility, or the empathy to accept and respect other points of view? The ones who think that because they are imposing on us life, we are going to impose on them death? Or the ones who receive some benefit from keeping people alive or keeping society from moving forward? I just want to say that your fears, your excuses, your religious beliefs, your ignorance, or your feelings about this are irrelevant, and they are not a reason to force others to keep breathing against their will. because then you would be saying that my biological functions belong to you and not to me. How ridiculous. The ironic thing is that many of the ones who are against euthanasia oppose it because they are afraid of the power that will be given to people, and they are terrified that they might be affected by it. But what they don't want to see is that they are the ones who are now abusing their power, and they are the ones who are deliberately causing great harm to others. The thing is that many that are against euthanasia are in favor of war and the death penalty, which means that they have absolutely no objections to killing people who don't want to die. But if someone does want to die, then they put their fist in the air, scream and protest so that this right is denied at all cost. And they say that they do it because of morality, ethics, and compassion, blah, blah, blah. You cannot say that you respect my life if you are not respecting my will to die with dignity and freedom. I find it abhorrent, sadistic, and cruel that many prefer to see millions of people commit suicide alone or in the most horrible ways without being able to be surrounded by their loved ones, or that they insist in prolonging the agony of the sick while they die inhumanely, rather than allow them to leave safely and under their own terms and not someone else's. Each person knows what is best for him, and those who want to embrace life must respect those who want to embrace death. I personally see life like a roller coaster, as if someone placed us there while we were asleep, and when we woke up and realized we were there, some are absolutely thrilled and they wish this game would last forever. Others are terrified, dizzy, or nauseous, and they can't wait to get the hell out of there. Others find the up and down and round completely meaningless and absurd. Others, even though they are not that pleased, they believe that they don't have the right to get off whenever they want, and they will do everything in their power to stop you from doing it too. They think that because someone else put them there, then that someone is the only one who can remove them, and that they have no say in the matter. If you believe that this experience is the best thing that ever happened to you, and you want to keep it going as long as possible, congratulations. But that doesn't mean that it is or should be the same for me. Perhaps many people think that people like me are sick, twisted, or possessed by the devil, and that we need psychological help because what they see as a supposed blessing, we see it as the complete opposite. The thing is that if I'm not having fun at the party, I have every right to leave whenever I want, and you have no right to stop me. The same applies to my life. I am in favor of euthanasia because I understand that being against it only causes immense suffering and pain. There are millions of people who don't want to live, who can't tolerate this existence, nor should they have to. I wish that every person would die in whatever way is considered ideal or acceptable for him. And the thing is that each person has a different concept of what this means. And it cannot be another, the one who dictates, determines, or decides what is or isn't acceptable for everyone else. I realized a long time ago that it is equally immoral to take a life that I don't have the right to take, as it is to try to save a life that I don't have the right to save, like in the case of abortion and euthanasia. Each born person is the owner of his life, his body, and everything in it. And having absolute control over this could never be considered a crime. On the contrary, our complete autonomy must once and for all be legally established as the inalienable right that it is. My intention is to cause the least amount of harm. I try to respect the rights of other humans and animals, even if these rights are not yet legally recognized. I don't base all my actions only on what is written in a book, a document, a constitution, or antiquated criminal codes, in traditions, culture, or the morality of 1,000 years ago. I base them in the present needs, in empathy and reason. And it is the documents that need to evolve and be upgraded, and not society, the one who needs to live tied to a past that is primitive, monstrous, immoral, or obsolete. Which means that we now have the responsibility to correct the many errors made by our ancestors. I would like to live in a world where people finally understood that imposing their beliefs on others and trying to control or manipulate their lives, and therefore causing them pain and harm, is a form of torture and therefore immoral and completely unacceptable. In conclusion, I believe that there's nothing more ethical than being able to tell someone, you can leave in peace, without any fear. You have the right to choose the day of your departure. You can do it alone, with your partner, or surrounded by your loved ones. However you want. You have the complete freedom to decide when, where, or how you will spend the last moments of your life. Wow, that is truly a gift. Because without liberty, there is no peace or happiness. I cannot fully enjoy this existence if I know that I don't have control not only over the quality of my life, but also over the quality of my death. Okay, everyone, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.